Welcome to Wichita Liberty TV with Bob Weeks.
Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Wichita and Kansas government and public policy. We're broadcast on KGPT, channel 26.1, also its companion website, kgpt26.com. Some of you may know me for my blog, The Voice for Liberty, at wichitaliberty.org on the internet. The motto there is individual liberty, limited government, and free markets in Wichita and Kansas. So I cover things that may not be covered by other news media in Wichita and Kansas. Or, if we do cover the same news, I'll do it from the perspective of economic freedom, limited government, and individual liberty, because these are the things that are important. These are the things that are so often under attack by our government, be it at the federal, state, or local level. So, please visit wichitaliberty.org. You can subscribe to my email newsletter. You can like The Voice for Liberty on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter. And if you'd like to contact me, my email address is easy to remember, bob.weeks@gmail.com. Well, the proposed Wichita sales tax does little to close the city's delinquent infrastructure maintenance gap, but despite this, there are rumors of another sales tax next year for quality of life items. Now, earlier this year, the steering committee for the Wichita-Sedgwick County Community Investments Plan delivered a report to the Wichita City Council. And the report contains facts that are very relevant to the proposed Wichita 1 cent per dollar sales tax. Voters will decide on that in November. The most important thing Wichita voters need to know is that the city is delinquent in maintaining the assets that taxpayers have already purchased. And the cost to remedy this lack of maintenance is substantial. On an annual basis, Wichita needs to spend $180 million on infrastructure depreciation and replacement costs. Currently, the city spends $78 million on this, the presentation indicates. And the cost to bring existing deficient infrastructure up to standards is given as an additional $45 to $55 million per year. Now, how does this relate to the proposed sales tax? Well, of the funds the sales tax is projected to raise over 5 years, $27.8 million is allocated for street maintenance and repairs. That's about $5.6 million per year. Now, if we subtract that from what the Community Investment Plan says we need to spend on deficient infrastructure, we're still left with about $40 to $50 million per year in additional spending on deficient infrastructure. Remember, that's on top of ongoing infrastructure replacement costs. So, does the proposed sales tax do anything else to address these unmet needs? And the answer is no, it does not. So what about this maintenance backlog? Don't we need to fix all this stuff? Well, I wonder if Wichitans will be asked to provide additional tax revenue to address the city's deficient infrastructure. So far, City Hall has not asked for that, except for recommending that Wichita voters approve $5.6 million per year for streets from the sales tax. But if we believe the numbers in the Community Investments Plan, we should be prepared for City Hall to ask for more tax revenue, a lot more. That is, if the city is to adequately maintain the things that taxpayers have already paid to provide. But it gets even worse. Earlier this year, the City Council considered spending various proposals for spending a new source of tax money. 4 survived the discussion and will be the recipient of sales tax funds if Wichita voters approve in November. And those needs, are a new water supply, jobs and economic development, transit, and street maintenance and repair. But there were proposals that did not make the cut for the sales tax that we'll vote on in November. These are generally in the category of quality of life facilities, such as a new convention center, a new performing arts center, a new central library, a newly renovated Lawrence Dumont Stadium, renovation of the Dunbar Theater, renovation of Watson Park, and help for the homeless. Now, evidently, there are many who are not happy that these proposals will not receive sales tax money. And there are rumors afloat that groups including Wichita city officials, are plotting for another sales tax increase to fund these items. Now, people are rightly concerned that even though the proposed sales tax ordinance specifies an end to the tax in 5 years, well, these taxes have a way of continuing. The state of Kansas recently had a temporary sales tax. It went away, but only partly. The Kansas state sales tax we pay today is higher than it was before the start of the temporary sales tax. But the people who want to spend your tax dollars on these quality of life items, well, they're not content to wait 5 years for the proposed sales tax to end. They are plotting to have it start sooner, perhaps as early as next year. These are things that Wichita voters need to consider. There is a backlog of maintenance, and there is appetite for more tax revenue for more spending. Even if the sales tax passes, these wants and needs will remain unfulfilled. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks. Well, the claim that the city of Wichita never gave Boeing incentives will come as news to the Wichita city officials who dished out over $600 million in subsidies incentives to the company. Well, here's what happened. At a forum on the proposed Wichita sales tax in September, Yes Wichita co-chair John Rolfe told the audience, "The main reason I'm here, I need to educate folks on this. There's been a lot of misinformation out there." Now, Yes Wichita, you may know, is a group that campaigns in favor of the proposed sales tax. They have material that looks like this. Now, the proposed 1 cent per dollar sales tax will be voted on by Wichita voters in November, and the city plans to use the proceeds for 4 areas: a new water supply, bus transit, street maintenance and repair, and economic development, specifically job creation. And it's the last area that is the most controversial. Boosters of the sales tax argue that Wichita has a limited budget for incentives, generally said to be $1.65 million per year. They tell us that other cities have much larger budgets for incentives, and unless Wichita steps up with additional incentives, Wichita will not be able to compete for jobs. But Wichita has many available incentive programs that are worth much more than $1.65 million per year. And it's important for you to understand about the incentive programs we have so that you may make an informed decision when you vote. And I want you to know that the Yes Wichita co-chair John Rolfe is correct. There is much misinformation. Here's what he told an audience of young Wichitans after warning about such misinformation. He said, "The Boeing incentive thing, the city never gave Boeing incentives. They didn't take our money and run." Well, the claim that the city never gave Boeing incentives will come as news to the Wichita city officials who dished out the subsidies and incentives. In a written statement at the time of Boeing's announcements that it was leaving Wichita, Mayor Carl Brewer wrote, "Our disappointment in Boeing's decision to abandon its 80-year relationship with Wichita and the state of Kansas will not diminish anytime soon. The city of Wichita, Sedgwick County, and the state of Kansas have invested far too many taxpayer dollars in the past development of the Boeing company to take this announcement lightly." And along with the mayor's statement, the city released a compilation of the industrial revenue bonds authorized for Boeing starting in 1979. Now, the purpose of these industrial revenue bonds is to allow Boeing and other companies to escape paying property taxes, and in many cases they also escape paying sales taxes. And according to the city's compilation, Boeing was granted property tax relief totaling $658 million from 1980 on through 2017. That doesn't include how much sales tax Boeing avoided. That figure doesn't seem to be easily available. And I've prepared a chart showing the value of property tax abatements in favor of Boeing each year, again based on Wichita City documents. And as you can see, there were several years when the value of forgiven tax was over $40 million. And you may remember that Kansas Representative Jim Ward, who at the time was chair of the South Central Kansas Legislative Delegation, he issued this statement regarding Boeing incentives. He said, "Boeing is the poster child for corporate tax incentives. This company has benefited from property tax incentives, sales tax exemptions, infrastructure investments, and other tax breaks at every level of government. These incentives were provided in an effort to retain and create thousands of Kansas jobs. We will be less trusting in the future of corporate promises." Well, that was Representative Jim Ward. Now, after I wrote about this, the Yes Wichita group, again, that's the group that urges you to vote yes in favor of the sales tax, it posted this on its Facebook page. They said, "Those who were at the event understand that the conversation was about cash incentives, not about IRBs. Boeing never received cash incentives from the city." That's the Yes Wichita's group. And I find that really astonishing. The Yes Wichita Group contends that although Boeing received an estimated $658 million in property tax abatements over several decades, this doesn't count as cash incentives because it was not given to Boeing in the form of cash. And you know what? The Yes Wichita Group is correct, in a way. As a result of the City of Wichita's industrial revenue bonds, Boeing did not receive cash from the city, and the city did not loan Boeing any money. But instead, the benefits the city initiated on Boeing's behalf, they were more valuable to the company than receiving an equivalent amount of cash. Yeah, that's right, more valuable than cash. And that's because the Internal Revenue Service says incentives like tax abatements do not count as income. And therefore, Boeing did not pay income taxes on these benefits, as it would have if the city gave Boeing cash. So the claim by the Yes Wichita Group that tax abatements don't count as cash incentives, well, that's characteristic of the way economic development incentives are justified. Governments usually do not give out cash, at least not large amounts. Instead, it's more common that government uses abatements, exemptions, credits, tax increment financing, and investments in training and infrastructure. Many of these programs are confusing to citizens, and I feel perhaps also confusing to the elected officials who approve them. But this allows government to shroud the economic realities of the transaction. Government says, no, we're not handing out cash. What government does instead, though, is to let companies skip paying taxes. And that is more valuable to the companies than receiving cash. And you have to make up the missing tax revenue. Yes, there is a lot of misinformation, as John Rolfe said. A few weeks ago, I told you how the Yes Wichita Group was claiming that sales tax money would be used to pave streets. That claim is not true, and the Yes Wichita Group corrected their materials. Now that same group wants you to believe that Boeing never received cash incentives. Well, yeah, but instead, what the city gave Boeing was better than cash. We're left wondering, as we've wondered before, whether the Yes Wichita campaign group is uninformed, misinformed, or intentionally deceptive when asking Wichita voters to approve the sales tax. Welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks. We've been talking about the proposed 1 cent per dollar Wichita sales tax. And there's controversy about the cost of the sales tax to Wichita families. A while ago, I shared you my calculations, which arrived at a cost of $223 per year for an average family if the sales tax rises by 1 cent per dollar. Others have approached the calculation in different ways and have arrived at figures in the same neighborhood. But at a forum where Jennifer Basinger, she's the chairperson or spokesperson for the Coalition for a Better Wichita, that's a group that opposes the sales tax, when she told an audience that the sales tax would cost the average family $240 per year, a spokesman for the Yes Wichita group disputed that. He told the audience that a family would need to have household income of about $200,000 per year in order to pay that much extra sales tax in a year. Now, the Census Bureau says the median household income in Wichita is about $46,000 per year. Now, I've asked the Yes Wichita group if it would tell us how it estimates the cost of the sales tax. Show us your calculations. That's what I and others have done. And I want you to remember also something else I showed you, which is that the cost of the sales tax to the lowest income class of families is nearly 4 times higher than for the highest income families. That's based on the cost of the sales tax as a percentage of after-tax income. This is the regressive nature of the sales tax illustrated in numbers, and it's something that Wichita policymakers and voters should consider. Well, Wichita policymakers have already considered this, and they still believe that the sales tax is the best way to go. So it's up to you voters to become informed on issues like this. Ask this of sales tax supporters. Do you have an estimate for how much the sales tax will cost Wichita families? Will you show me your arithmetic? Now, the cost of the sales tax is an important matter, especially for low-income families. Now, you know Wichita City Council member Lavonda Williams. She represents District 1, which is primarily northeast Wichita. She often speaks of her concern for Wichita's low-income families, as she did in November 2013 when the Wichita City Council voted to increase water rates. The city estimated that for the lowest class of water users, bills would rise by $1.33 per month. Now, according to the meeting minutes, Lavonda Williams stated she realizes that while some may think that $1.33 is not that big of an increase, but for many of our constituents, it is quite an increase for them, especially those who are on a fixed income. And she also stated this is concerning to her, and she appreciates staff looking at all options and for kicking off a program that will help those who need assistance from the city. So did you get that? City Council member Lavonda Williams said that $1.33 per month is a big increase in expenses for some of her constituents. Now, you also need to know that Lavonda Williams is an enthusiastic supporter of the sales tax. So I wonder, when Lavonda Williams voted in favor of the Wichita sales tax ballot issue, did she also understand that anyone who spends $133 per month on taxable purchases will see a $1.33 rise in their monthly sales tax expense? And recall that Kansas applies sales tax to food. Although there is the possibility of receiving a rebate, that rebate is implemented through a non-refundable income tax credit, which means that many people can't claim it. And here's something else I wonder. Since Lavonda Williams applauded the formation of a payment assistance program to those who can't afford their water bills, well, I wonder if she will also propose a similar program for those who can't afford a higher sales tax. And another thing that sales tax supporters tell you is that we should vote for the sales tax because part of it will fund the Wichita transit system, in other words, our city's buses. You're told that you are cruel and heartless if you let the bus system shrink. But you may be surprised to know just how much tax you already pay to run the Wichita bus system. Statistics from the Wichita transit system reveal that the fares that passengers pay is nowhere near the cost of providing a bus ride. For 2011, total operating costs for the Wichita transit system were about $14 million. And revenue from fares was a little less than $2 million, meaning that considering operating expenses only, 13.5% of the cost of a bus trip was paid by the passengers' fares. The rest was paid by taxpayers. And those figures are for operating expenses only. If we included capital expenses, like the cost of buying buses, the portion of the cost of bus trips that are paid by the passenger's fare is 12.1%. Again, you, the taxpayer, pay the rest, the other 88% of running the city bus system. And figures in this neighborhood are common for transit systems in other cities. So you already pay a lot of taxes to support the Wichita bus system. You do not need to feel guilty for refusing to pay more. And let me leave you with one other thought this week. The city says we need a water supply, a new water supply, and the way to obtain that is by expanding the existing ASR system. Never mind that last week, economist Art Hall appeared on this show and explained how we could satisfy our needs by purchasing water from farmers. But the city is not interested in market-based solutions like that. Instead, the city wants to build new water infrastructure. And the city gives you two choices. You can pay $250 million for a new water system, or through the sales tax, that is, or the city will borrow the money to pay for it, and you'll have to pay an additional $221 million in financing costs. Yeah, these are the choices you have. It's an official city document. And the city says that one of these choices is so undesirable that we'd be stupid not to vote for the sales tax. And there's also this relating to water. The city is planning for what's called a 1% drought. Kansas law requires that cities have plans for a 2% drought, and there's a big difference in cost between the two. And what about the undesirability of borrowing money to pay for water projects? Well, so far the ASR project has cost $247 million. And I know of at least $147 million that the city borrowed to pay for that, as just last week the city refinanced those bonds. So, if borrowing to pay for future water projects is bad, who do we hold accountable for the debt you would be paying off for the next 20 years for past water projects? Remember that 11 years ago, as the city was planning the ASR system, former Mayor Bob Knight was told we had water for the next 50 years. Maybe we do need a new water supply. But we don't need it right now, and we don't need to make the decision with the city holding us hostage with the threat of $221 million in finance charges. We can do better than this. And this is why you can comfortably vote no on the sales tax. You have already paid a lot for water. You are generous with your tax dollars in supporting the Wichita bus system. You're not being told the entire story about the city's unmet maintenance needs. And you're certainly not being told the truth about all the economic development incentives we already have. We need to reject the proposed sales tax and ask our city leaders to come up with something else. Our future depends on this. Well, thank you for watching Wichita Liberty TV this week. I'm Bob Weeks.